At the end of the 19th century, humanity almost lost wine forever. Millions of hectares of vineyards were destroyed, lit on fire, and the soils injected with kerosine. Tens of thousands of winemakers moved to Africa, hundreds of thousands of people in the wine industry lost their jobs, and wine became a scarcity. And nobody knew what was the cause. It is a tale of heroes and charlatans, with an ironic ending. What happened? How did we solve this? Let's find out. It's 1866. The European population is experiencing a period of relative peace and prosperity. The standard of living is rising fast, due to the wealth that the new opportunities that the colonization brought and the scientific breakthroughs that are happening. The appetite for wine is increasing, and so does the size of the area of vineyards across Europe. In France, the population is enjoying a calm period after the revolution, but not for long. On a misty morning in the southern Rhone, a winemaker reports the death of a whole vineyard. Nobody really cares, it happens, probably he fucked up something. But soon, adjacent vineyards also started to notice something unusual. It becomes clear that something is not right. The French government sets up a 3-man squad to investigate the situation. When they dig up the dead vines, they don't find anything. The roots are just rotten, but nothing unusual. They continue digging in the adjacent vineyards, where the vines also started to show some symptoms. When they uproot the vines, they notice that the roots are swarmed with tiny yellow insects. The researchers, led by Jules-Émile Plachon, professor of botany and pharmacy at the University of Montpellier, declared their triumph in finding the secret criminal, but instead of applause, they were faced with ridicule. The scientific community denied the possibility of such little insect wreaking havoc in this fashion. The officials in Paris declared that the appearance of the insect must be a mere symptom of the mysterious plague. The scientific landscape is in its infant stage at this point, just out of the womb of enlightenment. Louis Pasteur is just beginning his career. Charles Darwin published his radical work on the origin of species just 7 years ago. The medical community is convinced that all maladies are caused by imbalances in the body, rather than outside forces like infections or parasites. So, the scientific community is not so scientific yet, to be honest. The idea of the insect causing the catastrophe was tossed in the drawer, and the government of France set a bounty on the head of the bizarre plague. The bounty was big, really. It was 20,000 francs, which would be $1 million today. Naturally, the miraculous remedies started flooding the ministry by all the special scientists, shamans, sorcerers, witch doctors, and imposters. The most popular remedies that actually started spreading through Europe were burying a frog next to each vine, beating the vines with a stick, praying, and injecting kerosene into the soil. For example, just check out this beautiful historical Hungarian wine book from this period. It was published in 1898, exactly the time when Phylloxera was spreading all around Europe. So, naturally, it has some amazing instructions on combating the plague. Here you can see the instruments used to inject carbon disulfide into the soil. And here are the cool guys of the time in action, treating the vineyards. The text says, the treatment of phylloxera infested vineyards with carbon disulfide. Unfortunately, it didn't work. But there was one solution that actually worked, lighting the vineyards in fire. It did prevent the vineyards from dying because of the plague, but they kinda died because of the fire, so not a perfect solution. In a lucky coincidence, in 1869, a vineyard on the brink of death had a massive flood, and the vines were submerged for weeks. Unexpectedly, the vines were saved. Soon, this realization brought back attention to the possibility of the insect causing the trouble. The growers also noticed that vines on sandy soils were also doing better. This was explained by the fact that the insects couldn't dig their tunnels in the sandy soil. From this moment, the insect became the main target and the fight has begun. The name of the insect is Phylloxera. While the scientists were looking for remedies based on the positive effects of the flooding, winemakers started flooding their vineyards artificially. This technique worked quite effectively, but it was limited to vineyards with flat areas and to wineries that had huge financial reserves because the vineyards had to be flooded for 6 weeks straight. New vineyards also started to appear on sandy soils where no vineyards were seen before, for example on the beaches of France. But most of them were washed away by the ocean and the experimentation stopped. All these bizarre events show the desperate situation humanity was facing. Phylloxera is a microscopic aphid that feeds on the roots of grapevines. It can spread from vineyard to vineyard through the soles of vineyard workers, underground through the roots, or even through the air. It is native to North America, and it arrived in Europe in 1863 on a batch of vines that were brought to combat the powdery mildew crisis. Ironically, it caused more trouble than any other vine disease ever. Phylloxera has a complex life cycle of up to 18 stages, which can be divided into 4 main forms: sexual form, leaf form, root form, and winged form. The crazy thing is that one single female insect can produce 25 billion insects in a course of 8 months, without the assistance of a male. But if it was native to North America, how come nobody really knew about it until it arrived to Europe? Well, the Native American vines developed a natural resistance to Phylloxera. Their roots create a sticky sap that prevents the insect from attacking the roots. The problem is that these American grape species are not suitable at all for quality winemaking. Only the European Vitis vinifera species is used for winemaking globally. All the well-known grape varieties that you see on wine bottles belong to this species. So Phylloxera could spread globally with no issue. And it did. Spoiler alert, they did not find a cure for Phylloxera and we still don't have any. So how did we solve this if there is no cure? Well, the solution was laying in front of us the whole time. We just had to look at the root of the problem, literally. As I mentioned before, the American vine species such as Vitis labrusca were immune to Phylloxera. Developed by the 3 heroes, Jules-Émile Planchon, Pierre-Marie Alexis Millardet, and Charles Valentin Riley, the solution to stop Phylloxera was grafting the European Vitis vinifera vines to the resistant American rootstocks. To commemorate these heroes that saved the wine industry and to remember these dark times, I launched some new pieces on my website. Get your Phylloxera gang, hoodies, t-shirt, phone cases or digital products at arpadsub.com. Also, feel free to subscribe to my newsletter so you won't miss my new videos or products. Thank you. Now let's get back to the story. So the grafting allowed the root system to remain resistant to the spread of Phylloxera while still producing high-quality grapes. Grafting is the process of uniting 2 plants to form a single entity. The upper part becomes the top of the plant and the lower part becomes the root system. This sparked the birth of a whole new industry. Rootstock farms appeared all around Europe, providing millions of rootstocks for replanting. One of the most influential figures in this new industry was the renowned Hungarian scientist and plant breeder Teleki Zsigmond. His rootstocks, developed in the 1890s, are still used all around Europe, a testimony for his pioneering work. After the Phylloxera Plague, the entire wine industry underwent a dramatic transformation. Today, almost all the vineyards around the globe have been replanted with grafted vines, while some less fortunate places have completely disappeared. Although there are a few miraculous exceptions that somehow escaped the plague, some vines are still standing on their own legs. These vineyards enjoy a special place in the hearts of wine lovers and are rare gems, reminding us of a different age. Cyprus is one of the few places that was spared from the disaster. Most vineyards in Chile were also fortunate, being sheltered by the Andes Mountains to the east, the Pacific Ocean to the west, and the Atacama Desert to the north. Another famous example is found at the Italian Licini estate in the Montalcino wine region. The half-hectare vineyard was planted in the mid-19th century and survived the last 2 centuries without Phylloxera. The estate produces a limited edition wine called Pre-Phylloxera, which translates to before Phylloxera. Besides the chaos in the European wine regions, there was a pretty extreme effect in Africa that is rarely discussed. In the 19th century, Algeria was a French protectorate. In response to the Phylloxera pandemic, the French government offered subsidies to French winemakers to move to Algeria and rebuild the French wine industry there in Africa. In a matter of years, more than 10,000 wine growers moved to Algeria and more than 50,000 hectares were planted. This resulted in explosive growth of the Algerian wine industry, which quickly became a major part of the economy. In a few years, Algeria became the single biggest wine exporter in the world. But this unexpected growth did not last long. Easy come, easy go, after the Algerian independence, the wine segment imploded. Without access to the European market, they couldn't sell their enormous wine supply. The internal market wasn't a huge fan of wine, to say the least, so everything collapsed. The following governments thought that it is inappropriate for an Islamic country to have such an extensive alcohol industry, and much of the vineyards were converted to table grape production. So this is how it all went down. For a moment, humanity thought that we are going to lose wine forever, but we are smarter than that. We just had to look at the root of the problem. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out the website and see you in the next one.